doing today, we're actually all going to stay standing, and we're going to do a little audience activation to kick off this panel on the healthcare and metaverse for our community well-being. So for anyone who wants to join us, stand up as well. And so I'm going to start out and introduce myself, and I'm Carrie Shaw. I am a medical illustrator, a public health educator, and the founder of Embodied Labs. And I'd like all of us to embody our inner dragon. So stretch out your arms and give yourself some shakes, move your arms, and I'm going to pass it next to Sarah.
Hi, my name's Sarah Ticho. I work broadly in the field of XR and healthcare. I'm the co-founder of the XR Health Alliance that create a national strategy for XR and health in the UK, and also make games that connect to the brain and the body.
And who are we embodying in the audience with your introduction?
Embodying?
Give us a little.
Like an animal, or a concept, or a human?
Or an object?
Or an object. I am embodying lots of familiar faces from the AR house that I remember from a nice little jaunt a few months ago. So shout out to those of you in the AR house.
And Carrie Cusker.
Hi, my name's Carrie. I'm the Director of Clinical Innovation at Embodied Labs. My background is in nursing, and I'm just really excited, because I'm not a tech person, to be here in this space with all of you and to understand how what I do and what I'm passionate about kind of weaves into what you are all doing and how we can build a better community to age into. So I will embody like a wave, like a peaceful wave. You can just kind of just let all your, let everything go.
And Kiira.
I'm Kiira Benzing. I'm the founder and creative director at Double I Studios, and we build interactive experiences and transformative story worlds. And I thought we could all perhaps just find our inner light. So if you just want to take a deep breath and connect down into your light and just exhale it into the world.
That's nice. Hi, I'm Ryan Lebar. I'm a senior producer at Unity Technologies, focusing on live entertainment and sports. I'm incredibly excited to be here, and I'm excited to embody my Twizzler at a club.
Ooh, Twizzler at a club. All right, thank you. And now we're going to all sit down. If you want to stand and stretch at any point, please feel free. And we're going to start this conversation where we really explore what it means to be at the crossroads of healthcare, the metaverse, and why immersive for this conversation. So I want to pass it first to you, Sarah, and have you talk us through the kind of the categories of where you work across healthcare and XR.
So I work quite broadly in the field of XR and health, but it kind of started from my interest from a storytelling perspective. So I was an anthropologist by training, and worked a little bit in healthcare in the NHS for not very long time, because it was very boring and involved a lot of faxing from not that long ago. So I was like, okay, this is not where I really want to be. But I kind of went through my own experience of mental health and navigating the health system, and really wanted to find ways of exploring how we could tell our own stories, and the idea of the doctor's office as a performance space, and how you have this really short period of time to express what's going on for you, and they need to kind of, send you down the pathway of support. And so a lot of my work is using storytelling in VR, using things like 3D drawing to illustrate onto a body where you might feel pain or emotion, as a better way of helping people feel better understood. I'm also the producer on an experience called Deep, which is a breath-controlled virtual reality experience that was designed in collaboration with the Games for Emotional and Mental Health Lab to look at how we could help self-regulate our anxiety, and are now applying it to post-traumatic stress disorder, palliative care, and non-COVID, and then also dabble with things in the music industry and geolocative audio as well.
It's quite a kaleidoscope. I love how your work is like this kind of lots of spheres that overlap in different ways. I'm wondering in the audience, just show of hands, who's a developer that's working on indie games? Raise your hand if you identify there. Anyone in the music industry? Okay. Healthcare? Nice. What am I missing from Sarah's kaleidoscope? Narrative storytelling and,
Whoop, whoop.
and some personal journeys with care. Well, I think from there, I'd love to jump over maybe to you, Ryan, and I'm curious if you could share with us some of the milestones, like how did you come to be working at Unity, and what have been some of the things that have, I guess, made you proud over the years to keep you here and on this stage with us today?
Yeah, it's been quite a journey. You know, I started in theater, where I was directing plays, specifically became really interested in absurdist theater, and really about, you know, engaging in conversation, engaging in thoughtful, challenging work. And then I moved into the healthcare space, where I was, you know, investigating healthcare and VR and embodied experiences. From there, I was working in virtual production on some Hollywood films, particularly building technical pipelines. So I really became interested in how do we make these things at scale, especially with new tech and in new mediums. It can be really, really challenging to make great work. You know, we have the intention of telling great stories, but sometimes the technology can get in the way. So from there, I started working in physical ad space and interactions, and I've kind of come full circle at Unity. I'm on the sports and live entertainment team, and we're trying to solve all of the problems that come when you're trying to create virtual shows using game engines. It is hard, you know, like making a physical show, we're all here. Making a physical show that's great is really difficult. Making a virtual show that's great is even more difficult. You know, you have all the technology problems, but now you also have the challenges of working in a new medium. And what does that mean? So we're trying to answer those questions. We're also trying to create, you know, new workflows for creators to help them answer the questions when they're creating their own content.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah, and so when you say a live show, what, just like define, kind of help us visualize what a live show means.
So a live show can mean a number of different things. You know, we can augment physical live shows, like where we are today. We can have some sort of augmented application that are, you know, on devices, but we can also have completely virtual live shows. And those can be accessed from a number of different devices, your phone, a VR headset, you know, a web 3D application, a game client, and then it can also exist on all of our different metaverse destinations. So, you know, we've got Horizons and Decentraland and Sandbox, and there are new destinations that are popping up every day. With all different capabilities and intentions, and they're hoping to, you know, engage different types of communities for whatever it is their intention is, whether it's, you know, the specific artists that they're hosting, or the specific communities that they're trying to connect with and engage with.
I love that. There's this continuum of like where we are really physically right now together, all the way to completely immersive spaces that we can share or be in, kind of in our own paths and journeys. Who in the audience has like a theater background? I'm curious. Okay. And anything else with, I guess, Ryan, you work in sports and entertainment. Is there any part of the audience that's in sports and entertainment? A little bit. Very cool. We're like a kaleidoscope out here. Well, I'd love to hear from you, Carrie, to tell us more about some of the arcs in your career journey that brought you to the stage today.
Yeah, so this is absolutely not where I envisioned myself a few years ago. I've been a nurse for over 25 years. A lot of that was at bedside and really passionate about geriatric care specifically. got into the clinical education space and was working in a long-term care facility, training CNAs and nurses to support our elders and really pushing forward with this empowered work staff and personalization of care. So it was kind of a new concept, and I had a lot of liberties with how I was engaging with staff. With a strong dementia focus, it was really important for me to help our caregivers understand what was going on inside the minds of someone who was living with dementia and how we could better support them. And it was actually a CNA who called me from a conference because they had gone through and experienced one of the Embodied Labs modules with Carrie. And they had been in headset, and they called me like, oh my God, we need this. This is amazing. I've never seen anything like this. We need to get it. And we had some grant money, so we got it, yay. And it was the first time I had ever been in VR. I'm like not a gamer, this is not my world. So it was so new, and I was scared to even touch it because I thought I was gonna break the thing. Like had the tech team come down and like set it up for me. And I went through the experience myself and was completely moved by my reaction and things that I thought, I know this stuff. I'm a nurse educator. I'm working on my master's in dementia, but there were things I didn't know until I stepped into Beatrice's shoes. And that was really like profound for me. So started using it in orientation, and soon enough, everybody who worked at this long-term care facility was embodying a person living with dementia before they ever met anybody who was living at the home. And it really profoundly changed the way the care was delivered, and we saw all these light bulb moments. So that was how I met Carrie, and started talking about how excited I was for this technology and how it was really going to change the way we educated moving forward. And was lucky enough to be able to come and join the team in Embodied Labs, and now can work with partners to develop more content and move forward with this initiative of really changing the social construction that we have around aging and our belief system and the care model that's so outdated and really needs to be revamped because we're all aging. And I want to grow older in a world that is supportive and accepting of me and understands how to take care of me, regardless of what kind of conditions I may encounter in my later years. So,
thanks, Carrie. Yeah. It's been so inspiring to learn from you and your views, and I'm curious if in the audience anyone resonates with maybe not being a technologist and is here to learn and be a part of that. Yeah, I think it's so important to have people identify that way and share in these spaces, because that overlap creates so much more. And Kiira, I think having you share your journey will be so important for us to get to know all of the panelists, and then we'll dive into some discussion.
Wonderful. So my journey that led me here, I come from a theater background like Ryan as well, having trained at Lambda overseas in the UK in classical drama, and then found my way into filmmaking and technology, founded my Double I studio in 2009, and we were making linear films, but finding that wasn't the right format for us, and really asking the question of what type of storytelling do we want to see, and if we want to manifest a world where we can age in a more beautiful way together, then maybe we need different types of stories and different types of technologies to get us there. So my studio and I started experimenting with formats and working with game engines like Unity and finding XR and VR and just falling in love with the technology. And our first production that we were very excited about, which was a format of UGC and AR and VR, is called Cardboard City. We premiered it at the New York Film Festival. It was a 20-minute nonlinear experience and telling the stories about artists that were being pushed out of their neighborhood due to gentrification and helping the community sort of shape a world for a city that they would want to live in. And what was so beautiful that came out of that is that they built out of cardboard this city that created a space for those artists that were being evicted from their studios. So we sort of, through conversation and through the collaborative exploration and using the community, we found a new way forward. And then we went on to pull actors and dancers and improv performers into our work and start to mix theater and virtual reality and social VR and build our own experiences. And then we worked with High Fidelity, which was a really wonderful social VR platform, moving into a production that we did called Love Seat, which we premiered at the Venice Film Festival, and then finding Pandora X, which is something we're very proud of, that incorporated social VR and also taught the audience how to fly during the pandemic and start to inspire hope and bring the community together.
Yeah, thanks, Kiira. And so I want all of you to think about your own questions as we're talking, because we will have some time for audience questions. So just as we're talking, if you have something you want to ask, write it down, don't forget it. And so to talk, I think, kick off our discussion about designing and thinking about immersive, when we were prepping for this conference, we thought, well, why immersive? Like, why is this the medium that does things like accelerates community and well-being? So I'm wondering if a couple of you have things you could highlight for us that really to you speak to that why immersive.
I'll jump in. I think for me, like the real heart of it is that playfulness that XR brings. I think my favorite thing is just being able to put someone in a headset for the first time and just seeing that childlike state that comes on people's faces, and like everyone just wants to touch everything and play and move, and that it's not just, you know, interacting with a screen, but it is your whole body that you get to, you know, interact with it. And a lot of the work I do is about integrating things like biofeedback, and not just that moment of surprise where you get to, you know, play with your environment, but realizing that even your breath can control your locomotion, and that sense of delight. Especially when it's talking about things that are really hard as well. You know, lots of people struggle to talk about their mental health or express themselves, and so I think bringing them into that childlike state and being able to do impossible things. Like, I don't really want to recreate reality, but I want to be able to, you know, visualize invisible worlds or get people to interact with their environment in a new way and to see their world through a different lens. And I'd been predominantly in virtual reality for a long time, but now playing with AR and getting people to explore, you know, I'm from Brighton, and so we did in the UK, so south of London by the sea, and we did our first experience for Lemonade during the pandemic, so geolocative audio, where we worked with different artists to create music for the landscape in different places, and just seeing people and being like, oh, they're at that song there, and seeing them look at different objects and pieces of architecture in the city, and seeing them re-experience places that were already familiar was very compelling to me.
Yeah, when you talk about being playful and in like an immersive environment, but at the same time you're having people talk about their emotions and their mental health, is there like a story you could tell us that strikes you as memorable where you were integrating those things together?
Yeah, so right at the beginning of building Hatsumi, so this 3D drawing experience where people can express their emotions, then I just shared it with like a friend that I'd known since I was like 3 years old, and she'd always really struggled with her mental health. She had OCD, but very severe body dysmorphic disorder, and I was like, would you like to draw like a good day and like what a positive thing feels like? And she drew this illustration, and it was really interesting because she started to draw outside of her body, like there wasn't anything that was particularly internal, but yeah, she drew these kind of, you know, light fields around her, and that's what that really specific moment felt like for her. And then she was like, I'd really like to draw my like body dysmorphic disorder, like that feels like something that's much more like easy to access. And so she drew this kind of sinking feeling in her stomach, and she'd scribbled out her face and started talking about not wanting to be seen, especially when she goes out in public. And it was all just like very embodied, this kind of sinking feeling, and then all these red arrows like pointing at her face and saying that she just feels like she's being watched all the time. And I mean, I'd seen her whole journey since we were kids, but I'd never understood it until she drew it in that way, and it really like drove home like how severe this feeling was for her, and that she did feel that every day. And then we started to have a conversation about, well, how can we redraw these inner maps as well? How can we take that feeling of joy and those glowing lights that seemed outside of you and actually make that a part of who you are, and how can we like change that sinking feeling, or you know, or who could support you through that. And I think by having it something that was visual and tangible, and that you didn't have to actually, you know, stare into each other's eyes and talk about something really difficult, but you had this visual catalyst, really sort of drove me forward to keep on trying to build this thing.
It's like you had the substrate and then you could pull that back into finding the joy or the healing. That's really amazing. Yeah, I love that story. Have you thought of any kind of key why immersives for you?
I think building on top of that, you know, it gives us an amazing opportunity to further express ourselves that is not possible in reality. You know, like she was able to freely draw this visual content for you that was probably not, you know, there probably wasn't a safe, you know, feeling to do that in reality, or there wasn't necessarily a medium that was good enough to, you know, express those feelings. You know, I think about other experiences that I've had. You know, I was telling you all about a club that I went to in VR chat a couple weekends ago, and you know, I'm not typically a visitor of late night clubs. But I felt really excited and safe to go into the space because, you know, for the first time I had full control of all of these different elements. You know, I didn't have people like bumping into me. I could control the volume if it was too loud and uncomfortable. But I was still able to connect with people from all around the world who were expressing themselves in ways that, you know, they couldn't possibly express themselves in real life, you know, like having fantastical character attributes and you know, talking in ways that are not possible in the real world, and then being immersed in a space that, you know, is interacting with the music in ways that aren't necessarily possible to do in real life. You start to create this deeper understanding of other people. That we have real limitations with the physical, you know, rules of where we live in on
So you're like, it's like Friday night, you're in your living room in your headset, you're in VR chat, you go to the club. Like, describe one of your favorite interactions with someone you met, and what was it like? Was it just like a club in real life, or?
Yeah, it was this specific club was an event called Shelter, and it is a long-running, you know, bi-weekly event, and yeah, I met people who were dressed up, you know, as you know, their favorite characters, and there was a person who I spoke to in this kind of secondary room. We didn't know each other at all, and we were able to connect with each other and learn about, you know, where we were from, why we were attending, you know, like it was bizarre, but at the same time I felt, you know, really connected to this person, and that was an experience that I would never have in the real world.
Yeah.
I would never feel safe to, you know, go out and talk to a rando like that. It was great.
Yeah, well, it was like, I just remembered, like, Kiira and I actually met in alt space, and then she took me into VR chat to show me the backstage view of Mount Olympus, yeah, and we spent some time she was showing me how to try on costumes and, like, build an avatar and look in the mirror, and I was, like, you know, hadn't met Kiira in real life at all, and so I just knew her as the costume she was putting on. But Kiira, I know you've had some amazing community building experiences through your work.
Absolutely. I think social VR, like Ryan is talking about, and also in ways that Sarah was talking about in terms of us being able to find presence with each other, right? Like, it centers on this core value and core feeling of presence that we can have with other people in these shared spaces. Social VR is incredibly powerful for that. VR chat is a great platform, and there's so many others like Altspace where Carrie and I met as avatars and had a real conversation. We might look cartoon-like, or we might look fantastical. One of my most favorite experiences in VR chat recently, outside of course of Finding Pandora, but I was at XR Social Club and meeting other people that come from our industry, but meeting people I had never met before and meeting them through their avatars, and we all just started trying on different avatars with each other and changing in scale and size. I became really tiny, someone became really large, then we changed back and forth, and that kind of playfulness, I think as Sarah was talking about, the way that XR and these new technologies can be used in a really playful way, it's igniting something in our imagination, I think, that just makes us interact in a way that we wouldn't interact in the physical world.
Yeah, I'm imagining in alt space you see, I think Kiira caught my eye because she was emojiing like crazy. So when you do it, like if you all were, I don't know who's emojiing out there mentally, but like if we were in an immersive space, you could be like throwing the hearts out and thumbsing up over there, and like we would kind of get a sense of who's interested in what and like what are we all feeling, and it's like that why really comes through.
Responding in that non-physical way.
Yeah, with color, with shape, with motion, sound. I'm curious to know, like, what was a really maybe a challenging and frustrating moment that highlights something that you see as like what you wish was different about this medium?
I wish more people had headsets. I think that's one of the barriers still, is that it is very hard to describe these incredibly powerful three-dimensional experiences which live in the land of the abstract and the playful until someone puts a headset on and experiences that world or an experience itself. Until they do that, if you're exporting a 2D version of something, it just doesn't give you the depth until you put it on and you go into the world with your body and your imagination in a three-dimensional way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I'm really excited for how distribution could really change to make it more accessible. I think working with places like public libraries would be amazing, that there are places that you could go and experience it and have someone that could almost be, your local XR librarian. It's like, what do you want to try today? Where do you want to go? And that's why I'm really excited by healthcare as well. I think that's a really compelling way to make it accessible to people, from simple things like, things for relaxation in a waiting room to prescribing headsets to people at home that have particular conditions. But I think how it can be used as a form of preventative care and thinking about, making it more available to the public. I think that really needs to change because it is expensive, and I think it is a privilege to be able to use this technology, and I think that sometimes the representation in this industry can really demonstrate like what a privilege it is to work in it. So I think making it more inclusive really needs to be considered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love those thoughts, and when Carrie Cusker first described to me, I can't remember exactly what, but she said, we were putting on the headdress and we couldn't something. And I think the headdress was the most elegant way someone had ever described to me, like a desktop VR setup. But yeah, just how do we bring something that has to sit on our heads, and for women and people with hair of different shapes and sizes and with makeup, like how does that, even just the form factor impact us?
Yeah, we had, the facility I was working at was in upstate New York, and we had a very diverse staff, and the hair was amazing. Like, there were these intricate, like, beehive situations happening, and like braids that were quite expensive for them to have done, and yet they were willing to sacrifice this hairdo to get the headset rightly placed so that they could have this experience. And like, that's one thing that the VR, from an education standpoint, has been so transformative, because before I was literally chasing people down on the floors, calling them, texting them like, hey, you need your hours, I need to get this training done. And then with Embodied Labs, they were like knocking on my door, lining up, hey, can I get in the headset? Hey, when are you doing this again? Because it was fun. And, it's different than how Sarah describes it, because it's not Embodied Labs is photorealistic 360, and the idea is that you want it to feel as real as possible so that you can practice in a safe space these difficult conversations, these challenging life conditions, and really build empathy and, ignite a passion for doing better. And so, it's different. It's not super playful, and there are some really heavy topics that we touch on. But the fact that people were so excited to try it and to feel it, and then there was buzz about it up on the floors, even weeks after, oh my God, did you do clay yet? Oh my God, I cried so much. Or oh yeah, did you see in Beatrice 3? So we have to play this music because this is what they were listening to back in the day. And all these connections were happening without me reminding them, without me saying hey, we should really mute the volume on the television when we're talking to someone living with dementia, or we should really turn on more lights, or we should use music when we're doing this self-care task to help them with their motor skills and their movement. It just was happening because they had this perceived lived experience, which became a memory. And then that memory was something that they had in their arsenal that they could draw on to really improve themselves as caregivers. And, it's so exciting to see that transformation happen just from them experiencing, an 8-minute vignette, and from that to be able to change what someone's life is like living in a long-term care facility is pretty profound and amazing. So we have VR to thank for that.
I love that really speaks to what acceleration can look like in healthcare and in community building. It's in the headset, it's beyond the headset. Like we said, this is a continuum of immersive from the real spaces we're in to all the air around us and what can be done with that. And I think Kiira, you've shared some of your audiences have come from spaces that would not be possible to bring those groups together. And I think
Absolutely.
describing the way you run your shows might be really enlightening.
Yeah, it's so fascinating working with XR because we can really transcend space and time in ways. So we're bringing these, groups of people together that are coming in from all different time zones around the globe. As we performed Finding Pandora and Love Seat for different audiences, Finding Pandora, which is fully just in social VR, our actors performing from their homes, our audiences coming in from their homes, everyone gathering into a shared space, just as everyone who's here online joining us, right? We're all in this shared space together. And so what's been so brilliant is getting all these different cultures coming together that don't even speak the same language, but they have to play these collaborative games and solve puzzles with each other. So they transcend language just by being in that shared space, trying to figure out the puzzles and following the characters. And Finding Pandora, it's a branching narrative, so half the audience follows Zeus and half follow Hera onto these quests. And it's been really wonderful to get to see all these different cultures coming together and sharing with each other, we have to solve this puzzle, so I don't know how to tell you this, but I'm just gonna hand you the key, and then I know you'll know what to do with the key.
A universal, how does a key transcend across language and culture? And that's really interesting. And so speaking of interesting, we are interested in hearing questions from you. Let's take a couple here in the blue shirt. If you can say your name, and I think there's a mic coming your way.
Oh, there's two.
Microphone on the way.
Thank you all so much for being here today. It's really exciting to see the ways that each of you are so different in how you're exploring this space. I think my question is primarily targeted toward Carrie, but happy to hear from anyone. I'm with Ascend Learning. We make interactive trainings primarily for nurses and nurse educators, as well as a number of other groups. And my question is, a lot of the work that we do is teaching hard skills that are, speaking very frankly here, not all that entertaining. I hear the idea of going on quests with Zeus, and that seems fun. The idea of learning how to take someone's blood pressure is less fun. So I'm curious, when you're talking about healthcare, especially these hard skills, what are some ways to make these experiences resonate with your learners, especially those who aren't maybe as technology oriented by default?
That's a really good question. So one way that I've used it was I built this caregiver support group using the Embodied Labs experiences, and we were able to go through an experience as a group together over Zoom and then talk about how we felt and what would be helpful, and then do some skill building practice, in the Zoom, forum. So it wasn't necessarily that you were in VR the whole time, but the VR experience kind of like catapulted us into these conversations to be able to demonstrate some more of the hard skills and challenges, specifically surrounding caring for someone with a cognitive deficit. Other things that are really fun that we've been exploring are ways to kind of put these little mini games or like these gamified moments into our experiences, whether it's we're learning about what are different forms of abuse, and then there's like a slide game, is this abuse, yes or no, and then what type of abuse is it, right? Or we have something that we're thinking about as far as identifying red flags in an environment, and what makes somebody unsafe at home. And so for a social worker going on their first home visit, what are they able to identify in a VR space that is a red flag that maybe the person's not telling them, hey, I'm having trouble with my medications, but seeing a big bowl of all their meds mixed up together on the coffee table is kind of, an indication they might need help. So using like those moments to do some data collection and understand what they've learned, where they need support. It's really, it's a way that they can learn and prove knowledge without it being like a post-assessment test. There are things that aren't going to be fun, and they're not always meant to be fun, but leaning into the discomfort and allowing people to, practice, and whether it's like a noise or an icon or something that like gives them that positive reinforcement, it keeps them coming back for more.
That's a great question.
And I think just to add to that very briefly as well, I think like a really big part of what Embodied Labs do is like really involve storytelling. And that it's not like you're just doing this task. It's like I'm entering this person's world and story, and you guys work with really incredible writers and directors. And so I get like swept up in it, and it's like I want to do the next chapter. Like I want to know what happens next. And I think a big issue with healthcare is the medicalization of the human experience. And I think the ability to actually like say that, maybe you are taking someone's blood pressure, but, what else is happening in that situation? How are you seeing the human behind the blood pressure?
I love that. Yeah. I love that. Thanks, Sarah. Okay, I have a question for the audience. Who has a question? Everyone with a question, raise your hand. Like if you have a question at all, raise your hand. No one else has any questions, because there's going to be a meet the speakers time where we want to hear your questions. So I hope all of you that have them will come join us for meet the speakers, because we are out of our time for this panel on the stage. But to end kind of our discussion today, I want to hear just in a lightning round from each of you, what's one takeaway that you'd love to bring home to the audience? Or you can choose a question or challenge to pose back, one or the other.
Okay. Whew. I haven't thought about this.
Anyone can jump in. It doesn't have to just start with you, Sarah.
No, I'll give it a go. I think for me then, on the talking about healthcare and XR, I think one thing that is really overlooked is that collaborative process. And I think that anyone that's thinking about creating experiences, for me, a big takeaway that I've sort of learned through lots of failures is like working with people, like bring together like amazing artists that have never done anything in XR and be like, how would you approach this problem? As well as, bringing in people from health that have that expertise from the beginning. But most importantly, I think working with patients is the most important part, and involving them and embedding them in the development of that process, and making sure that their voices are heard through the experience is a really important takeaway I'd like to leave with everyone.
I'll jump in. I would say ask why, not once, but all of the time. Why are we doing this in this medium? What is unique about this medium? How can the story provide value in this medium versus other mediums? Again, it is hard to create content in these new mediums, so we should have a very strong idea of why it's important to be telling these stories this way.
That's great.
That's important, definitely. I think As the metaverse is so rapidly expanding, and to Ryan's point earlier about building these new pipelines and these things are just shifting and changing, we have to keep asking why and make sure that the world that we build in this new metaverse is built with the right types of ethics and community values that we don't have here in the physical reality, that we could change and affect in this new shared, co-created virtual world. So I think if we can keep asking why and implement the values that we really want to see that we don't have now, that will help us build a better future.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and building off of that, Kiira, I would just say to, just embrace relationship building and keep, the humanization of everything you do kind of like as your compass for how you move forward in this new space and these new opportunities that we have, because we have some incredible opportunities. So don't be afraid. I was afraid when I first got the VR kit, and I am no longer afraid, and I'm excited to be part of this world. So thank you for making me feel welcome and sharing your talents with us.
Well, thank all of you. We can't wait to meet you all, meet the speakers, so please do come find us. And with that, we will wrap up Metaverse and Healthcare and how it accelerates our community health and well-being together. Thanks.